Hello and welcome to the Tonearm, connecting you with the people and ideas moving culture forward. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today we're putting the Tonearm's needle on Billy Polo, in-house audio and mastering engineer at iconic Jamaican music label VP Records. Billy has spent years restoring and remastering some of the most important recordings in reggae and dancehall history. Works from Peter Tosh, Dennis Brown, King Jammy, Sly and Robbie, and dozens more. Billy works with the original analog tapes, often in rough shape, and brings them back for today's listener and tomorrow's. We talk about the restoration process, what vintage tape actually sounds like when it's failing, and what Billy's doing to make sure all of his specialized knowledge doesn't disappear. We're here because of your support, listening, sharing, and giving at thetonearm.com. Thanks. And now, Billy Polo. How you living?
Not bad, not bad.
You're not putting down a beer at
No. This is the old Canada Dries. Although I have been doing a master today that it would warrant maybe having a couple.
It's driving you to drink. Yeah.
Oof, man, I tell you.
So what makes a master drive you to drink?
Oof. Well, with like anything, each one of them has their own individual set of circumstances. Like with reggae stuff, it's the, kick and the snare are usually a lot louder sometimes than the rest of the music because this is big speaker music. When it comes booming through the sound systems, when you have all that bass getting juiced, it might flood out vocals, it might flood out the drums and stuff. So on these mixes straight off of the tapes, the original mixes, sometimes that doesn't always translate to digital the best way, so you got to kind of finesse things a little bit and, make sure that they sound good digital, otherwise you just get, vocals and a kick drum and you're like, all right, that's the song, huh?
Is that because a lot of times the mixing engineers don't know how to prep something for mastering?
The stuff that we're working on is what's primarily all the old tapes. The era that I'm working in a lot lately is the 80s, early 80s, like Junjo Laws, Jammy era.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of the opposite. Like these guys down in Jamaica, the mastering process was cutting to vinyl or cutting your lacquers for your dub plates or for your, record that would go into production. So
Interesting.
Yeah, I have the good fortune of working with Paul Shields, who's here. Any questions that I have, like, oh, how did you guys do it in the 70s? How did you do it in the 80s? What was the thing? And he's given me more information than I could ever think of, things I wouldn't even have imagined. It's nice being around some of the older school guys, the foundation guys who were there. So if something doesn't make sense to me with my modern ears or later era ears, and then I can ask him and he would be like, oh, we just did that because it worked out well, or we already knew the mix was good and we'd just send that straight to cut straight to production.
That's crazy.
And a lot of times these mixes would get cut in the studio and then that same night they would be playing on a sound system on an acetate. So who's got time to master something when you want to just get it out to the people, That's kind of the wildest part of some of this is, like I was talking to him a couple weeks ago. He was like, the way that the studios were dialed in was just the consistency was always there. Like if you could listen to something that Jammy tracked, or even coming from Channel 1, like Soulji would track or Barnabas would track, and then somebody else would maybe mix it. The essential recording was always the same because they were going through their console and then the console was your preamps. It's not like now where it was like, oh, I'm going to use the quad 8 on the kick and then the drummer on the snare, all of that. Within their consistency, it was just like an elegant simplicity that just duplicated the same great result all the time. That was pretty amazing. But he would tell me about, we would cut a lacquer and then we wouldn't even go get it plated. We would just turn that test cut into a grandfather and just go get it, just put it into production.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's pretty wild with some of the stuff they were doing.
Tell me a little bit about your origin story, both with the music and with audio engineering, and sort of what's the chicken and the egg there? Were you already into engineering when reggae became part of your life, or is it the other way around? Like, what's the Billy origin story?
I'm the sixth of seven kids. Music was always just kind of a part of the family growing up, whether my oldest brother, and I'm not just saying this because he's a guitar, he's my brother, but he's one of the best guitar players I have ever been around since I got into music. He's 10 years older than me. So there was a stretch there where he would, when I was young, he would take me to the studios with him when they would go and do recordings. And there was some sessions I would go to. And, you're like a 12-year-old kid or, like younger, and you're in a recording studio and you see all the dials and it looks like a spaceship and everything. And that kind of piqued my interest. Fast forward maybe to like when I was like 19, I started really getting into reggae music. I used to work at this place. It was like a graphics place. And there was this guy there, this punk rock kid. I read his name was Hells. He's found out that I was into reggae and then just gave me this tape, this mixtape that a friend of his had made. It was so not most people's entry into reggae where they get Legend or they get something like this was like deep stuff, right off the bat. Hearing like Augustus Pablo for the first time and, the King Tubby stuff and like hearing that stuff and was like, wow, you can be just as creative as a musician playing a drum part because I'm a drummer myself. I can do a mix where I can express the same creativity I would as a drummer, but as an engineer. Dub got me hooked into that. It got me hooked that way. Just bought the old Tascam 424 4-track machine and then we had a band back in Milwaukee before I moved out here. And in my parents' basement, I had this stadium audio controller. And it was this like 8-track mixing board. But, to somebody first getting into it, it was like, oh my God, this is the coolest looking thing ever. And it was the size of like a Volkswagen, and it was like 8 channels. And we had everybody go into the board and then we recorded it to a cassette deck at the end of it. So then I also had it configured where I had a cassette deck in front of it now. So we would record to this one cassette, then we would take that cassette, put it in the front and play it into the board and then do our overdubs over that onto the next cassette.
You're like George Martin.
Without the skill or the brains, yeah.
It's the hacker mentality, though.
Exactly. And to me, it was like the coolest thing ever. I was like, oh my God, we're doing overdubs,
Yeah.
But then once I started digging further and further into the 4 tracks, the 8 tracks, and that really kind of piqued my interest. And I had like an okay grasp of it. And then from there, it was just kind of throw yourself into situations and, sink or swim. Figure it out or do something horrible for somebody and never get hired as an engineer again.
When you were screwing around with the 4 tracks and the 8 tracks, like earlier on when you first started getting into gear and playing around, how did knowledge get transmitted? Were you like on an island by yourself, just trial and error, or were there elders you could go to or friends who knew a little more? How did, in the old days, before you could just go on YouTube and take a master class, how did you learn?
I really didn't start learning. What I found out is over the years now I've been doing it for as long as I have, I've just found out that my brain just works practical. Engineering, whether it's audio engineering or mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, practicality is kind of the basis of it all. As an engineer, it's your job to solve problems or come up with solutions for problems. So just the practicality side of it, I've always just thought very practical and then came up with things that I was like, oh, this seems to work. It works because it's practical. Fast forward, to now that I had the chance to work around some seasoned guys and some well-known guys, that's really when it started going from like practical application to like technique and to learning stuff like that. I was partner in a studio called The Kennel in Brooklyn for a while. Wharton Tiers, the engineer who did Sonic Youth, he did a whole bunch of stuff. Very, well known in the 90s and in the hardcore scene and post-punk, indie scene, stuff like that. He was a partner in there too. So there was, just kind of hanging around his sessions and watching how he did things and asking him questions. And I mean, he's one of the greatest guys I know in the business that way, and I knew I was getting better. He would ask me, he would come in the next day and I would have like a change set up, for like recording or mixing. And he would be like, why did you have that going into that? it forced me to have to answer, which means I had to think about what I was doing instead of just routing something that I thought would work, to his questions going from why did you do that to how did it sound when you did that to this and that. So that's when I knew I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to, in his eyes, like get better and just come up with some new and interesting ways or things that made sense to somebody who wasn't me, which means a lot.
If you had to explain to a listener who loves music but has never touched any gear, why does something like signal path matter? What does it mean, first of all?
Okay.
Why does it matter what gets plugged into what in what order? Is there a lay way to say it?
This is one of those things where it's like it could be a very simple, easy answer, or you could get into esoterics.
No physics. We don't do physics and we don't do math on this podcast.
I mean, I guess ultimately you just want the cleanest, purest signal. I've been doing less recording and kind of working more in archiving and transferring a lot lately. And I really made it a point to not, even though we're using multiple machines and multiple formats, like I still preferred to not use a patch bay, going from tape machine into the computer or whatever. So
yeah,
that signal path, when you're archiving and digitizing, just having the purest straight off of the machine. I mean, when you add additional connections, you could potentially introduce phase problems. You could potentially introduce more noise or a buzz, or the more connections, the more potential problems you might have.
You talked about those early exposures in the recording studio and seeing the console and then hearing some of those master dub forefathers. And realizing that the mixing board was an instrument, right? And then I think of the board as something between an instrument and like a compositional tool. Like it's a very unique role in that music.
100%.
What's your self-conception? Broadly, like there's the engineering, and even within that, there's like new music, there's the archival work that you talk about, and I really want to dig into that in a minute. But then there's also, you still create music, right? Like I run into you at a party and I say, what do you do? What do you do?
I do stuff on things.
I'm going to steal that.
I'm a musician who got into engineering. First and foremost, I'm an artist, writing music, producing music. There's nothing that I love more than playing drums. There's absolutely nothing. Next, like producing, I love producing, that's fun. Just getting in there with artists and exchanging ideas and bouncing around stuff. And even I like it when people get passionate about their ideas, because then they're like, okay, hell or high water, I want to do this idea, and they'll fight for it, which means that they're trying new ideas, trying all kinds of different stuff. I'm a musician and who got into engineering, found my niche, essentially.
What I'm curious about as it relates to that is, now in your archival work, how much of an artist are you allowed to bring to that, right? Because in a way, you're working with somebody else's project or idea or vision. There's the archival part, like there's the historical restoration, preservation. But I also assume, and tell me if I'm wrong, there is a little bit of an interpretation part too, right? Like if the original people aren't there and you don't have the manual to what they were doing that day, and I'd imagine a lot of tapes come in without a lot of studio notes and session notes, there's art and science, right? And I wonder if you could pull that apart a little bit and talk to me about when you're a scientist, when you're actually doing scientific work, fixing, restoring, preserving, and when you're doing more interpretive artistic work.
On the artistic side, when the A&Rs want to do a release, right? And I've done this with some of the stuff from Jammy's catalog. They would put out a mix, and the original mix was mastered at, say, like Townhouse or Trident Studios back in London, back in the early 80s. And those masters, the low-end information is there, but it's not meant to be cut onto the record. It's meant for the listener or the sound system to turn up the bass and really make the song bloom. But those masters sometimes don't translate to digital as well as you would like them to. In some cases, we have the mix that Jammy did that didn't go to Townhouse. So we have the mix that Jammy did, the master Jammy had, and then the master that Townhouse had.
Interesting.
the master that Jammy did was more bass heavy. It was a lot warmer. I will usually opt for Jammy's mix for a digital release because that mix translates to digital a lot better. So that's when kind of the art side of it comes in. The A&Rs are just kind of happy that the record is going out and, oh, you found it. We have it. So I'm like, yeah, we have 3 versions of it, actually. So as the engineer, that's where you get to pop in some of your ear and like, oh, well, my taste thinks that this would translate better to digital. Now, if we were to do that release as a physical release, I would go with the Townhouse Master because that was specifically designed for that. It's kind of like we just finished the Dennis Brown project that is coming out very shortly or is out, unreleased stuff and unreleased mixes and this and that. Sometimes you A/B these things and see which one is the best for which format. Because at the end of the day, all I really want to do is to bring out the original idea or the original vision that the artist and producer had. You know, sometimes there's a lot of actual noise that gets in the way, or when people transferred these tapes, you know, we might have a copy of something from back in the day. And when that copy got transferred, maybe the left side was out of phase and this and that. So that's where the science and the art kind of all, no matter what, just folds into one kind of. It's just like some things like, oh, I'm leaning maybe 10% more artist or I'm leaning 10% more scientist, but it's all 100% archaeology.
I would imagine every box you open is like going into like another King Tut's tomb or unsealing another chamber. And can you talk a little bit about the conditions of things? Like, are you in a race against time in the work you're doing, or do you, in terms of degradation and deterioration, or is the material you're working with generally in better condition? Like, what happens when you open a box? Is it exciting every time? Do you know what's inside? Are you finding interesting things? Like, what's that all about?
There's some things that are just in our archive. I mean, there's things that you open it up and you're like, oh, there's this handwritten note or like an invoice from 1973 to like Sly Dunbar, Robbie Shakespeare, Robbie Lynn, and just kind of, and like sometimes with the multi-track tapes, there's like unique track sheets from like, oh, Dynamic Studios, or oh, this was a Byron Lee session, or these other things. And sometimes it's there's nothing there. You bake the tape, you put it on, and you're completely surprised. Other times you bake the tape and there's nothing on it, but the box is labeled, and you're like, oh man, I was hoping that would at least yield something. Or sometimes it's like at the end of Indiana Jones where they open up the Ark and just everything comes flying out. And you're like, oh my God.
Don't look.
Yeah, exactly. Don't look, just put it away. A lot of times I will say, yeah, just finding old track sheets or old, like, oh, this had Linville Thompson's phone number on it. Those just kind of interesting little things is always interesting.
Yeah.
There's a good percentage of what's written on the box is not actually what's on the tape. That's what I always find interesting is you get through the tapes and then all of a sudden there's like maybe 10 minutes left. As an archivist, you got to run the whole thing because you never know what's on the end, and all of a sudden, pow, there's something that you had no idea existed. And then I bring it forward to the A&R guys, and the two guys that we have here, Carter Van Pelt and Chris O'Brien, like these guys are encyclopedias. And if they are like, oh, wow, I don't know what that is, then I totally know that we just stumbled upon something that's great. Some fun stuff.
Does that happen often?
Well, one of the interesting things here, so when I started, the key to it all is like, you just have to start from one, because the reason so many things get lost is because people start to cherry pick. Like I said, what's written on the box is not what's on the tape a lot of times. So you just kind of got to start from one and work your way down. And then when you hit the end, then you know what you have. And there's always some gems.
Yeah, to your point, there's always that end of the tape, or there's the jam that's not mentioned on there, or there's the song that on the production master faded out, but on the tape, there's 10 more minutes of guitar solos. Or
Exactly. One of the common ones I come across here is because the standard for a 7-inch single is the vocal is on the A side, and then there's an instrumental or a dub on the B side. So when you look at these entries from the tape boxes that are in the database, right? So you're searching the database for whatever they're looking for. Usually if you see 5 songs listed on a 10-inch reel, it's the vocal version and then the dub or the instrumental. So there's actually 10 songs on there, but they wouldn't specify the version because it was just the fashion of doing it. So if you saw the vocal, you knew that there was a version there. So when you're looking at these things in the database, you're only seeing 5 songs. But if you're looking for Junjo version of Police and Thieves instrumental, you only see the Junior Mervyn Police and Thieves. But then the version is right next to it. The instrumental is right next to it, but it's not written on the box. So when you're looking at it in the database, there's so much that just gets lost. So what I did when I started here was just kind of a revamping and just started from one. And now we've got the catalogs we do own, the producer catalogs we do have, full itemization. It's like, it's not what's written on the box, it's what's on the tape. So the A&Rs have just been, Chris and Carter have just been loving it because they're like, oh, this is on my sheets, on my databases that I give them. This is actually what's on the reel. Because the boxes are, things get swapped, things get lost. Sometimes this ends up here. There's so many auxiliary factors that things can get mixed up and it's not what it is. And the next thing you know, you think you're sitting on all this stuff and then you go listen to the tape and you're like, oh, actually, this is all gospel music. This is nothing to do with what was written on the box.
Is your work primarily driven by the needs of A&R, or is there still archiving and restoration strand that goes on in your work where it's not reactive to a request? You're still just building the, getting the vault in order. Like how should I think about like what you do day to day? Is it just, there's like, okay, somebody wants to put out another Jammy, product along these lines. I got to go pull it together, or, is the question making sense?
Yeah, totally. They do give me a little bit of freedom if I come across something that I think could be or would be able to be turned into a product or something they might be interested in. Maybe not this quarter or next year, but eventually go ahead and restore it. Go ahead and master it, or at least get it into a condition where if we were going to turn it into a product, it would be ready. We can fire shots for the A&Rs, but I always like to have bullets in the chamber for when they run out of bullets. They do give me, some freedom to conceptualize it. Like, I know this audio is good. let me just go ahead and finish this, let me get it ready. And then I alert the A&Rs, and then, yeah, they'll run with it. And, I have clients outside of here as well. Like I did the composer David Amram, did like Splendor in the Grass and Manchurian Candidate, like the original soundtracks and score. And he's composer, and just phenomenal stuff too. Some of that was amazing just for like, wow, like recording like Carnegie Hall, 1968. Like these pieces he would write, and you're like, wow, 2 microphones. And then the archaeology side of your brain starts kicking in, and then you can kind of hear the setup and kind of visualize yourself there. Like those clients too, those are the kind of, maybe it's a race against time because of the tapes. We're kind of at a point now where I don't care how well your tapes are stored. Some of these things were coming up on 60, 70 years, and the lifespan is about 80 for these things. And yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I didn't expect to, or didn't think about having to learn, was the composition of tape and formulas and blah, 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 like all of that sciencey stuff, and that's the stuff I never thought I would be like, oh, okay, now I know about AGFA, like, or,
do you like knowing that? Like, is it interesting?
It's definitely helpful. I've been putting together a list that maybe I'll publish it as a manual or something like that, maybe in 10 years, because it's kind of information that's not really there. And if you are into the archival side, and it's kind of like a service manual for archiving tapes.
Oh, interesting.
There's acetate-based tapes, there's Mylar, poly. To the life of me, I'll never be able to say that word. But the polyethylene, I'm glad they call it Mylar. I've learned a lot. Like a gentleman who was like a tape rep salesman, he'd been in the business for like 60 years. I bought a bunch of empty tape boxes off of him. I was on the phone with him one day just asking about the boxes, and then he was asking about tapes, and we just ended up being on the phone for like 2 hours, and he was just giving all the information, like, oh, this tape, and then this year it switched, and this is how you can tell the difference between an acetate and a Mylar based tape by just holding it up to the light, and all these trade secrets or just inside info or, salesman stuff. And, oh, this is the composition of that. And then they stopped that because it was having shedding problems or it didn't adhere. And then they switched the formulas. And yeah, just incredible information that you're never going to find in any book. Depths of information that sometimes are just not going to be there. You're not going to find it because it's not there.
Yeah, that seems super valuable.
Yeah. So I do want to do a call with him one day and just be like, can I record our conversation? And because that's the thing, like with a lot of this tape stuff, so many of these guys are of advanced age, and when they go, there's so much that is going with them. It's a hit to the industry.
What do you find on the hardware side? Like, because you're working with a fairly consistent archive, do you not necessarily need like weird archaic machines, or like, are you always having to go find hardware? Are there people to fix the machine? Like, tell me a little bit about the universe of hardware you have to exist in.
Oh, some of the machines that we have here are preview decks or playback decks. So they're not recording. So we have a couple of these MCIs that, they're meant for cutting to lathes. So they have all these different speed controls, which is really interesting, which helps a lot because I'm big into DSD. I do all of my archiving to DSD and then transfer that to, or convert that to PCM or like WAV files.
Tell people what that means.
So DSD is a format that is not big with the mainstream, I guess, because the file sizes are enormous. It's not editable other than like adding some metadata to the tracks, but it's a .dsf file. When you have a WAV file, you have 24 bits. Say you have 24 bits and then you have, 48 kilohertz. Whereas DSD is a 1-bit technology and it samples in megahertz. So you're getting 1 bit, each bit sampled 5.2 million times.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I do everything to DSD first. I used to run audio tapes at 24,192, and that's the only time I ever really noticed any difference between like 98 or 96 kilohertz and 192 was just doing audio tapes. But essentially what I do now is I record to DSD and then we convert that to 2496. And then we do all of our editing, all of our mastering, or anything we have to do in 96. And then we deliver it to the DSPs 2496. So by the time you hear the audio streaming on your DSP, it's the exact same. There's been zero conversion from when we put it into the world of PCM. So once we made it a WAV file, it's essentially the exact same WAV file that we made coming off of the tape.
Any considerations that the streamer makes for your bandwidth settings or quality settings, they're just sort of transcoding on the fly?
Yeah, like Tidal, for instance, will just always play the highest, whatever your subscription allows, So if you have like the high def one or whatever, it always plays at the highest.
But you're not delivering the lower res, right? They're transcoding to it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we just, we let it avalanche down.
Yeah.
And, it's been kind of interesting just hearing how different formats translate through the conversion process. And I've never had it go bad. I've never heard it been like, oh, God, this is the worst thing I've ever. But DSD is also very expensive and it's like an extra step or two to convert it.
A lot of storage, no?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's it's pretty hefty. I mean, there's just different schools of thought on it. I love it. I think it's really good. And it really shines when you have the right machines to kind of go along with it too. Like anything, if you come up with your formula and it sounds good, then you got your formula.
And how about fixing gear? Do you guys do that? Or is there a band of high priests that come around and service the equipment? Or
for the tape machines, I use tried and true, the almighty Mr. Bob Schuster, Midnight Bob, for anything and all things tape. Yeah, he is. I mean, he's kind of a New York institution at this point. He's one of the people that like, wow, this guy knows everything about everything.
He's the machine whisperer.
Oh my gosh. He's phenomenal. The gear we have here and of my own personal gear, he's probably done 10 machines for me. I send everybody to him. I keep going back to him. Like, yeah, he's one of the best, and even those guys too. It's like, I heard about this guy whose name was Al Grundy, who was like the lathe guy in New York. Like the old school guys all learned from this guy. Bob Schuster, took the machine out to him and he brought up his name. And I'm like, I never had the chance to meet him or work because I wasn't around at that time, or I wasn't working in the field. That's where it hits me. It's like, yeah, once these guys are gone, so much of their information goes with them. So it's even the tech side, like guy like that goes and everybody takes the hit.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell me a little bit about Lineage, right? There are these people, these figures you're referring to, and how if we keep looking at the guy behind us and the guy before us, like the pool of people that came before actually gets smaller and smaller. And ultimately it's like you get back to the voice of God who made the tape machine or knew about all the tape machines. And like, there are these cast of pioneering characters, right? And that's in every one of these sections, right? It's the physical media, it's the hardware, it's the music. And you're in a lineage of these sort of artist technicians, right? Like the dubplate pioneers, and whether it's Jammy or Tubby or Augustus Pablo, like, how do you situate yourself? And any modesty, false or otherwise, aside, because at some point there's got to be people who are going to turn around in line and see you, and they're going to have questions for you. And you've already talked about preserving the knowledge in the book, and things like this conversation become part of the, the historical archive. How much are you able to think about like your role in the chain?
I'm just happy to be a link in the chain. I held my little part together for the whole thing. Even with David Amram's archive, there's audio that I transferred that was turned into records that are in the history of a composer's life, contributing to Jamaican history by preserving and archiving this music here and what I'm working with, and how that just spills into culture, life, and just Jamaica in general. Yeah, just being a link in the chain is fine with me.
Yeah.
You mentally kind of make the switch where I think it's where you mature as an artist or engineer, or I mean, even as a human, where, when you first kind of get into these things, you're like, oh, I came up with this thing, this idea, and this is my secret to do this. And, you keep it close. And then as you just kind of keep going and you either start to level up or you just expand your circle, you find that like you get better the more kind of things that you talk about and trade info with other engineers. And because there's always so much to learn, that just helps kind of spread the information too, because you might exchange some info and have a conversation with another engineer who's doing something similar. And maybe they have an engineer that's an intern right now, or they have an intern right now that could go on to be the next Alan Parsons or George Martin or something like that, so sharing information and conversing is huge, and it's not worth holding on to anything, because and you pass and you have all that info, you're kind of kneecapping anybody who's coming after you if you have anything substantial. We all have something to say.
How much opportunity have you had over the years to either professionally work with or just commingle with the elders and those that came before you? Like, have you had the opportunity to either just talk with or learn from or communicate with some of these other figures, whether it's in Jamaican music or the broader sort of engineering community? Like, is there a brother and sisterhood of people that exists?
When I started working here, they sent me down to Jamaica a few times. So, and when I go down there, I go to Jammy's studio, and I've been learning a lot directly from him, whether it was me kind of giving him a call and asking him something, or being like, how would you, and him, obviously, I worked with Clive Chin. Like, that was, we worked together. We were running his archive for like 4 or 5 years. And that was just being with him every day, and, just having the opportunity to ask him all kinds of questions, as well as being here, asking Christian, who was, a cutting engineer. He was an incredibly smart man as well. Yeah, from whether it was like larger music industry things to like very specific, like, I noticed that there's this kind of pattern of people delivering tapes like this. Does that mean anything? The guys there's still a lot of them around. Some of the coolest people you'll ever meet, and have no problem answering questions or sitting down for a chat, about most things or anything you'd want to know. I mean, one of the guys I really wish I could have met, but this is so far before my time, I guess, was Graham Goodall was an engineer, and he was at Federal recording that, and he built Federal back in the days before consoles where you could go to the store and buy a Mackie or a Midas or any of that. Like, your studio was built from the electrical outlets all the way to the windows. I worked on a lot of his tapes from maybe I remember the earliest tape I think I worked on is just from like 63, something like that. And then the latest one I worked on was somewhere in the early 70s. It was exactly this, like his formatting, his everything was exactly the same for as long as the tapes I worked on too, is, over a decade. And you can just tell it was one of his by just how it came off, like right from the beginning. It was like hit a certain, just had a thing to it, so you could recognize it like instinctually after a certain point. Like guys like that, I really wish I would have been able to at least like converse with or meet or but then again, everybody would love to meet Jimi Hendrix and talk to him too. So it's kind of like that's that level of my wish list.
Tell me about Scratch Perry. You spend time with him?
I ran a couple shows. I did one show. It was at a place on the west side. My friend Josh Warner was playing bass with him, and they put the band together, and they had me come in. They wanted me to run sound for that and do kind of dub stuff, which is always kind of an interesting thing because like doing dub in like a live band situation is a little tricky because you want to stay out of the way of the vocalist. You want to make sure the song comes across. And a lot of times I've seen that happen. It just kind of turns into mush. So I was like, I definitely am not going to experiment on the Lee Sperry show for sure. But yeah, there's somewhat of a limited exposure to as far as personally. I have worked on a lot of his music, Black Ark era stuff. I've put my hands on the tapes that he had buried in his yard.
Yeah, wow.
We have some Lee Perry tapes that I had run off. When a tape sheds, there's the magnetic side and then there's the adhesive side. And when tapes shed, pieces of tape, even in their worst condition, will just fall off. Like they'll separate and you'll get these big chunks of tape. I ran Lee Perry tapes where the tape is hitting the head, and after it hits the head, it's turning into this like glitter particles that are just going into the air. And you're like, number one, like there's just the music is magic. It's the only time that I've ever heard something come off of the tape where I'm like, there's a spirit in the room with us right now. Like there's something bigger than just a really cool song coming off of the tape. And then you look over at the tape machine and there's just like, like all this sparkly glitter going off into the, coming off of the head. Everybody's just sitting there, like not saying a word, just totally sucked into it. So even from beyond the physical, it's the magic is on those reels to that extent. I mean, there's been tapes, I've run tapes where I've heard Marley stuff, Tosh stuff, just beautiful, beautiful music. And you're like, you just get drawn into it. And you're like, what? This is like it. And then you come in once in a while, these Perry tapes, man, like this comes out and it's like you're in the Black Ark and you just feel differently. The air in the room changes. You're watching, whatever kind of juju that is, it's real.
The last thing I wanted to ask you about, which is Atmos.
Okay.
I've done a little bit of work in Sony 360. I'm curious about Atmos, especially as it relates to reggae and dub. I haven't listened to any reggae or dub in Atmos, but I'm curious your work in the format, your thoughts on the format, the opportunities around it. It's a really open-ended question. I just would love to know how you think about it.
I cut my teeth on immersive audio at Sony. Atmos and 360 and all those things were starting to really kind of come about. One thing I learned, to me, I mean, because remember when Atmos came out, everybody, or like the industry was like, this is the new thing. This is the new thing. This is everything's gonna be Atmos. But like, I just always saw it kind of as something that would run parallel to just stereo mixes and stuff like that. The Atmos mixes I've worked on, like I have a dub record that's done in Atmos and I've been sitting on it for a couple of years. But I'm also back and forth with Jammy about doing some dub stuff in Atmos with him, because if anybody should be the first reggae artist to drop a dub record, it should be Jammy.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what context you use it in. So, like, if it's in a cinematic kind of thing, go nuts. Left, right, center, up, down, diagonal, ceiling, floor, in front of you, behind you. It's beautiful that way. I think one of the underutilized ways that Atmos, it's kind of, to me, Atmos in music is like, oh, let's go crazy just because we can. In my opinion, one of the best ways to kind of utilize Atmos to its fullest extent in audio is there's no compression. You have all the space in the world. So you can actually release a record the exact way that the artist wanted it to be visualized, because during the mixing mastering process, eventually you have to take, say, 64 tracks and smush them down to one left and one right, and things inevitably get lost, So now you have all the space in the world where left and right doesn't even matter. It's like there's no upside down in the universe. So you have all the space you want. So now you can lay things out in a way where, like, oh, that little guitar part that I never heard in there was really that much more of a part of the song, but it got smushed out because the formatting of making a stereo mix. So I think its biggest benefit would be that you could release something the way that artists actually wanted their record to sound, instead of this up, down, well, we're going to take the horn line and make it go from left to right. And then it sounds like it hits you in the head and it does all this. Because with music, that's also very distracting. It's like if there's a bad frequency in a song, your ear's going to be drawn to what's annoying you instead of what's you find enjoyable about it. My friend Clay Wells Holly built an Atmos studio. He was doing some Atmos mixes for us at VP here. And I'd go in the studio with him and we'd kind of just, listen to some stuff and we'd like just kind of throw some ideas around. I think he recognized that too. Like, he's great with the Atmos stuff too, I'm not trying to say I mix this stuff, but I'd just be like, hey, like, not to keep it simple, but maybe like he did one mix of the Barris Hammond song we did in Atmos, where it was like the mix is laid out beautiful, and then they have this really nice horn line, and then the horn line just kind of comes at you, and then when it ends, it just goes left and right, just so it's kind of like, and it's not distracting. It's just like a little augmentation, and it's something extra that adds to the experience of the listener.
Yeah, it requires taste, right? It requires some delicacy and taste because it's easy to make it gimmicky.
Exactly. One of the best things I've ever heard in Atmos, there's Anthrax's Among the Living. That Atmos version was really, really interesting because there was just all kinds of stuff in there that I was like, wow, I was like listening to the record all over again, like brand new for the first time. Jesus, there was this record, it was Elton John. It's like from the, I think, late 70s or early 80s. It was like one of the old studios on the West Side.
Yeah.
Just like a live performance inside there. And it's piano, guitar, and drums. I don't know who did that mix, but they laid it out so beautifully. So when you use it in instances like that, even like for like a live performance, like it's really, really, really cool. There's some Bee Gees stuff that I forgot who did the mixes of it, but like the backing vocals are like behind you and they're a little bit separate from the other backing vocals and the other harmony. And anytime you get to hear harmony vocals separated a little bit from each other, where they sound like the three of them, but then you hear the components of the harmony. It's always I love that too, like, I mean, like, obviously, like guys like Andrew Sheps who are doing Atmos mixes, they're incredible, super, super high level. And they're just bringing a certain amount of, it's taste, but I don't know, maybe like decorum is the word too, that it's like
restraint almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a David Gilmour guitar solo. Everything is just the right move.
Yeah. I dig that. Thank you, man. It's great to talk to you. It's fun, man. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you doing your thing, and the show's great.
Thank you so much, Billy Polo, and thank you for tuning into the Tonearm. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out the over 300 episodes available in our free archive at thetonearm.com. While you're there, sign up for the Talk of the Tonearm, our weekly newsletter. You can also become a paid supporter at the Support Us link. The Tonearm is executive produced and hosted by me, Lawrence Purrier. We're produced and marketed by Michael Donaldson. Editing and sound design is by Terry Grant. Our theme music is by Birdie, spelled B-U-R-D-Y. Thanks for listening, be safe, and stay in touch.
After listening to this episode, head to thetonearm.com, our online journal covering unexpected music and culture. Right now on the Tonearm, you'll find features on exploratory violinist Zosha Warpea, the one-body orchestra of Christopher Tigner, lo-fi dream pop artist Zahara, minimalist music author George Grella, and so much more. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter, Talk of the Tonearm. That's thetonearm.com. The Tonearm, putting a needle on the cultural wax.